Webster Dictionary, and a really awesome person. And I'm really excited to have her drop in some science on words. Emily Brewster, please take the podium.
Thank you, Neil. Do I get your beard too? No, that's your beard. All right, sorry about that. One, tanorexic. Tanorexics have a sensation similar to that of anorexics, who believe that they are overweight due to a defective body image. Calling himself tanorexic, Hamilton spoke of once requiring a film company to fly him from the set in England to North Africa on the weekends so he could sit in the sun. As a recovering tanorexic, I can tell you that the appeal in tanning stems from its predictable outcome. 2. Foudoir. The foudoir was popularized by the likes of Frances Mays and Ruth Reichel, who wrote eloquently of lazy Italian plumbers and revolutionary West Coast restaurants, punctuating their musings with recipes that brought the flavors of their stories onto the reader's plate.
Bullshit!
These foudoirs have become a successful subset. 1 part chicklet mixed with 1 part chickenlet. 3. Globesity. Globesity is now a serious threat to the health of most nations and threatens a public health crisis in developed and developing nations. Obesity is a global issue. In fact, it's often referred to as globesity and is most pronounced in some of the developing countries where they very rapidly develop diabetes and cardiovascular disease. 4. Guyliner. He's glam. His guyliner is perfect, and his voice is glamorous. Meanwhile, various elves and shamans in their guyliner and dopey costumes run about the forest casting spells on each other. 5. Bromance. The most compelling aspect of the film is the bromance between Sherlock and Watson. Alas, some bromances must come to an end. Their bromance is complicated, however, by the fact that they are 3 of the most powerful warlords in the late Qing Dynasty China. My name is Emily Brewster, and I'm tonight's lecturer. I've been a lexicographer for Merriam-Webster for close to 10 years now. As a lexicographer, my primary job is to define words, that is, to write definitions, that is, to analyze usage and determine what the words in the sentences I'm reading mean. To do that, I have to read lots of sentences like the ones I've just read to you. But we'll get to more of that in a minute. Also, as part of my job, I answer correspondence. Thanks for writing. In your sentence, if you should row, then the boat would go. Would is indeed functioning as the past tense of will, but it's not the kind of will that has to do with choosing or determining. Rather, it's the verbal auxiliary will that is used to express futurity. In the present tense, the sentence is, if you shall row, then the boat will go. I hope this is helpful. Sincerely, Emily Brewster, Associate Editor. Hello. We do indeed include an entry for the noun snatch in our Merriam-Webster online dictionary. It's the second homograph listed, and it's defined as 1a, a brief period, b, a brief fragmentary or hurried part, 2a, a snatching at or of something, 2b, slang, an act or instance of kidnapping, 3, a lift in weightlifting in which the weight is raised from the floor directly to an overhead position in a single motion. 4, usually vulgar, the female pudenda. I hope this is helpful. Sincerely, Emily Brewster, Associate Editor. I also write usage paragraphs, so on administrate. There's also the criticism that administrate is overused, but our evidence shows that administer is much more common. Given this last fact especially, all the commentary would appear to have been less than necessary. Affect and effect. Effect and effect are often confused because of their similar spelling and pronunciation, etc., etc. I am also one of the writers for the word of the day. Edentulous. Edentulous. Noun. Having no teeth. Toothless. Edentulous comes to English directly from the Latin edentulous, which in turn comes from the Latin prefix e, meaning missing or absent, and the Latin root dent or dense, meaning tooth. I do all of these things, the letters, the usage, the word of the day, but my main job as a lexicographer is to define words. There are two schools of thought when it comes to lexicography, the school of the descriptivists and that of the prescriptivists. At its simplest, the difference between these two is this. Prescriptivists believe in prescribing. They believe that the purpose of the dictionary is to guide people in their choice of words. Descriptivists believe that the purpose of the dictionary is to describe the words of the language as they are used. A prescriptivist, for example, will tell you not to say that it's, quote, literally raining cats and dogs, because that would mean that there are cats and dogs falling out of the sky like rain. A descriptivist will tell you that Dickens, Alcott, Fitzgerald, Mather, Thackeray, Nabokov, and Joyce, without question all competent users of the language, used it hyperbolically for emphasis, and so can you. Merriam-Webster would be notoriously descriptivist if a dictionary company could be notoriously anything. I would not work for a dictionary company that was not descriptivist. But my conundrum comes in this. The commitment to descriptivism comes with consequences. So I firmly believe that my role as an observer and cataloger of the language, an impassioned reviewer of the changes that occur in the language, and I aim to approach all words equally without any prejudice, but leads me to a situation like the following. A few weeks ago, I was reading the New York Times, and I came across an article, maybe some of you saw it. This article highlighted the word, I think it was actually in the title of the article, the word was femivore. Did anybody see this article, femivore? Anyone want to take a guess at what femivore means?
I do.
All right.
What is it?
What is it?
All right, I'm gonna make it a multiple choice quiz, so I'm gonna give you 4 choices. I'll read them all through, and then I'll go through them again and you can vote. All right, throw it out. All right, here are the 4 choices. Choice A, one who eats only women.
Yes.
Choice B, a woman skilled in oration. Choice C, a parasite that feeds primarily on the femur. Choice D, a woman with a chicken coop. All right, so who picks A? A femivore, is a femivore one who eats only women? How many hands? Yeah, looks like 10-ish, maybe. All right, how about choice B, a woman who is skilled in oration?
Yes.
No, nobody likes that one. Okay, C, a parasite that feeds primarily on the femur? All right, that one's pretty good. And a woman with a chicken coop? I see somebody read the article. It's actually D, a woman with a chicken coop.
Why?
Femivore, F-E-M-I-V-O-R-E.
Deconstruct it for us.
Break it down.
Femivore.
Break it down.
All right, so the fema part is simple. That's where the woman comes in, like feminine, like feminazi. And vor is from carnivore, herbivore. And the author of the article put the prefix fema with this ending vor that has to do with eating, and she said that it has to do with women who raise their own chickens.
What?
I know. But my point is that this is the kind of thing that I come across in my job, and I actually have to take it seriously. I have to look at this word and say, okay, this is what this word is being used to mean, and I guess I better write this down.
Get out.
Because it's in the
Except that, I mean, the fact is that if this catches on, if we come across it, if I see evidence of it in the San Francisco Chronicle, if it's in Newsweek, if it's in Time Magazine, if it's in Cat Fancy, if it's in Pulitzer Prize-winning books, then it's going to need to be defined by me or some other Merriam-Webster editor. So, that's where I am. And it has to be used with no allusions to itself as a new word, without any kind of commentary about it being a new word or an unusual word or something like that. So if it comes down to it, somebody will define it, and it'll be an interesting word to talk about, no matter how much we have to roll our eyes when we do it, but that just comes to the territory of the job. Words like femivore and tanorexic, which means addicted to tanning, and globesity, which means obesity as a global problem. I'll admit these words don't do much for me. These are words that technically are called blends. They're words that are created by blending other words or other parts of words. The English language has many of these words. They go back as far as late 1500s. Wistful is one. It dates to 1741. Many blends are quite serious, like mammalogy, which is a branch of zoology dealing with mammals, and latensification, which means increasing the density and contrast of a latent, that is not yet visible, photographic image by chemical treatment or exposure to light of low intensity. But the history of blends shows that more often than not, these are words with a bit of a giggle and a wink to them. I'm going to go through a few of them. So one is squawk. Intransitive verb, 1821, probably blend of squall and squeak. To utter a harsh, abrupt scream, to complain or protest loudly or vehemently. Snoozle, verb, 1831, perhaps a blend of snooze and nuzzle. Chiefly dialect, it means nuzzle. Ruckus, noun, circa 1890, probably a blend of ruction, meaning a noisy fight, and rumpus, a usually noisy commotion, means row or disturbance. Glob, noun, 1900, perhaps a blend of globe and blob, means a small drop, a blob, a usually large or rounded mass. Scanties, noun, plural, 1929, a blend of scant and panties. It means abbreviated panties for women. Fantabulous, adjective, 1957, blend of fantastic and fabulous. It's a slang word, it means marvelously good. Snarf, transitive verb, 1965, perhaps a blend of snack and scarf, means to eat greedily. Pleather, noun, 1982, blend of plastic and leather, a plastic fabric made to look like leather. Threepeat, noun, 1988, blend of three and repeat, a third consecutive championship. E-tail, noun, 1995, blend of E, the prefix E, and retail. Retail business conducted online via the World Wide Web. Is femivore really so different from these? What about bromance and foudoir? I don't love any of these words, but I'll admit that the other day I was talking about Cormac McCarthy's book, All the Pretty Horses, and I described it as a bromance novel. It just seemed apt. And what about the word foudoir? Why say memoir in which the author writes a lot about experiences with food when we can just say foudoir? Honestly, I don't think that femivore has much of a chance. I think that the fact that it's kind of hard to understand what it means, it doesn't immediately, the meaning of it isn't immediately apparent from the word. Chicken coop, I don't really get that. But the thing that keeps me from getting really disheartened at all these silly neologisms, and there are many, another one is humom. Is anybody like, humom is growing on me. Humom is a woman who, it describes the relationship of a woman to her pet. She's not the mom, really, she's the humom. Which, I know, right? It's not that bad. The thing is, I'm not going to really have to deal with it as a lexicographer unless it really catches on. So it's actually up to all of you to decide. It's not up to me to decide if it's a word or not. I'm certainly not going to write a definition for it until it's actually out there and established in published, edited text. And that's where things really, what I take comfort in as a lexicographer is that the system of the language keeps things neat. The language itself doesn't really allow for things to get too outrageous. Words only catch on if they function. The users, the speakers of a language, the writers of a language are the ones who really decide what's going to work and what's not. If nobody uses a word for, gosh, even 15 years, it just, nobody knows what it means anymore, and it just kind of goes away, even if it's still found in some books or some articles. So, the fact is that as a descriptivist, I just have to accept that whether I like them or not, these words exist. But I don't have to write definitions for the new ones unless they really catch on, unless people like you guys use them. Thought I would leave you with 4 words that did catch on enough to get defined that I kind of wonder about. First is philanthropoid, noun, 1945, a blend of philanthropist and anthropoid, a person who works for a philanthropic organization. Cremains, noun, plural, 1947, blend of cremated and remains, the ashes of a cremated human body. It's kind of useful, I guess. Glitterati, noun, plural, 1940, a blend of glitter and literati, means celebrities. Futilitarian, noun, 1827, blend of feudal and utilitarian. And I'll leave you with this. A utilitarian is one who believes that human striving is futile. Lexicography, though, I don't think is futile. But that's all I have prepared as part of my lecture, but I'm happy to answer any questions that people have. Are there any questions? Yes?
How many words are typically added to the dictionary in a year or a 5-year span?
There are about 100 words added a year or so. And every 10 years, the Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary is updated from cover to cover, so every definition is examined, and at that point, thousands of words are added.
And how many are taken away?
Not very many. Most of the time, there are always a few in the, not so much during, so for the revisions between every copyright, we mostly fool around with we might shorten verbal illustrations to make room for new changes. But for the new edition, there are always a handful of words taken out. We try not to do that. Instead, we take away things like lists of colleges that nobody really cares about anyway. I do have a list of some of the words that were taken out for the 11th Collegiate Dictionary. You want to hear some of those?
Yes.
Okay. Microcopy, lots of things having to do with microfiche. Microfiche is still in there, but all these words related to microfiche nobody uses anymore. So microcopy, microreader, micro-reproduction. Record changer also left, which I don't know. I know. Yeah, vitamin G. Has anybody taken any vitamin G lately? Yeah. We call it riboflavin now. Impudicity. I should look that one up, but I can't because it's not in the dictionary anymore. I have an old one, so I can still look it up. Wool stapler. Wool stapler. I have no idea what it means. 10-cent store. Those are some that were taken out for the What was the last time you guys went to a 10-cent store? What is that even?
Does the 5 and dime still in there?
Yeah, 5 and dime is still good.
5 or 10-cent store.
Are there any other questions?
I was just wondering what the most prescriptivist dictionary.
American Heritage Dictionary was created in response to Merriam-Webster's third unabridged dictionary, which came out in 1961. It was the first dictionary to include the word ain't, for example.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And American Heritage was actually created in response to that.
Because of the ain't hubbub?
Because of the ain't and because of a lot of other things like ain't.
Ain't gonna take it.
Question.
Yes?
Are there any new words that are triple, triple words combined, like boudoir noir?
Yeah, I'm sure there are. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But there's no reason for people to limit themselves. So people come up with really long, silly words. Aaron?
What's the process? How many people have to agree before it becomes a word?
Oh, it's very solitary work. So lexicographers at Merriam-Webster anyway. Merriam-Webster's the only dictionary company in the United States that has a full-time staff of lexicographers. There are about 32 of us, and we all sit in a room and don't talk to each other. And we look at evidence of words in use. So you're looking at, right now it's all electronic, but you're scrolling through these examples that show a word in context. And so it's pretty subjective. If a lexicographer thinks that a word is ready to be defined, it's ready for entry, then that editor makes a case for it and basically says, we have evidence going from this, we've got evidence going back 15 years, 20 years, we've got evidence in all these different kinds of publications, here's the definition I'm proposing. And then my boss comes through and says yes or no.
Hey, Emily,
Yes,
are there any loose cannon lexicographers? Like, have there been, like, rogue lexicographers who needed to be, like, kind of weeded out?
Dord.
It's a really tough process.
No names. You don't have to say names.
No, he's talking about a word that got into the unabridged dictionary that shouldn't have gotten in.
And that was from a rogue lexicographer?
No, it was just an error. I actually don't know of any rogue lexicographers. There's so many processes it goes through. It gets proofread so many times, and it would have to be somebody really high up.
I just didn't know if your boss pulled someone aside and said you're kind of not doing.
Not that I know of, although I don't know. Maybe my time is coming. I don't know. The word "dord," D-O-R-D, was entered in Merriam-Webster's third unabridged dictionary, and that's right. You're right. It was the second, which came out in 1934, and it was defined as density, and. After the first printing, which is kind of bizarre, somebody noticed this, some scientist, and said, I don't know this word "dord" that means density. And so the company went back and looked through the files to see what had happened, and it turned out that an editor had written on a piece of paper, they just written capital D or lowercase d, definition, density, and the typist, I'm sure you can't see that. The typist thought it said "dord" is density. So, so "dord" meant density for, I don't know, a few weeks anyway. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Paul?
Yeah, what gives your boss the right to define words?
He's a really good lexicographer. Yes?
Is there like political components, the idea of prescriptive versus descriptive, and the idea that English is supposed to stay or be spoken a certain way, and that like conservatives or like English speaking only in America, or like America's an English speaking country, those would be prescriptivists, and like that they would look down on Merriam-Webster, and the idea that like you guys are letting,
Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting question. A lot of countries, or no, a number of countries, actually don't know how many, but a number of countries have a board, like a committee of people who decide what, how the language changes and what's acceptable and what's not. And English doesn't have that. I feel like I'm constantly surprised by how many people who describe themselves as politically liberal, and who are politically liberal, but who are pretty conservative linguistically. So, but yeah, I don't really know. If there's a correlation, it's not really apparent to me. Yes?
Is manscaped in the dictionary yet?
No. What is manscape?
It's when a guy trims his body hair.
Oh, nice. Scape words are big these days, though. Like the whole scape suffix is big.
Manscaped.
Manscaped is coming, it can't be held back.
Oh,
Yes, in the green and white.
what's that?
Yes.
Oh man.
I'm an editor for UrbanDictionary.com.
Oh, nice.
So I suppose you and I are colleagues.
I get that word of the day.
I have no idea what you're referring to, but anyway. Now, you're referring to blends. How does a blend differ from portmanteau? And are you familiar with the, I don't know, is it a blend, is it a portmanteau? What is a slur?
What is a what?
A slur.
A slur, I made it up. It's a slut/whore.
Okay,
Oh, nice. To answer your first question, I don't know the answer to the second question, but the answer to your first question is that blend and portmanteau are synonyms.
Oh, so this is
Yeah, Lewis Carroll came up with the term portmanteau. It was originally...
Which came first, blend or portmanteau?
Blend is the older term, and it's the term that's traditionally used by linguists.
When was blend first used by linguists?
I don't know that.
As a lexicographer, don't you feel like?
Yeah, I'm actually a big believer in reference books, so if I could right now, I'd have access to the OED up here, because that's the historical dictionary, and that's where I would go to find out when it was first used in that way. Any other questions?
So, online educational dictionary?
Yes.
Do you also things for mispronunciation? Like, if a pronunciation that's incorrect becomes very popular, do you have to add that?
Yeah, the question is about different pronunciations, mispronunciations of words, and yeah, we have a pronunciations editor whose job is only to write the pronunciations, and yes, if a variant pronunciation like say nuclear gets used by enough people, then yeah, it gets put in. Especially if a president or several presidents give that pronunciation, it gets put in the dictionary, because you can't deny that it's a pronunciation.
So as a descriptivist, does that bother you?
No, I mean on one level it doesn't at all, and probably the longer I do this job, the less it bothers me. But yeah, I have to admit, part of me kind of is like,
Like supposedly, is supposedly in there?
I don't know if supposedly is. My husband accuses me of saying supposedly from time to time. I don't think I do, but I might. I don't know.
Emily,
Yes.
library, thoughts?
Very, no.
I like library.
You like library?
I mean, I think that I never hear library said by anybody on NPR. I never hear it said by.
Good example.
Yes, John.
I'd like to bring it down a notch. I really liked your definition of snatch.
Okay.
So, is there any other kind of dirty definitions?
Well,
Favorite?
oh, well, my party word is that I put golden shower in the 11th collegiate.
That's a perfect transition. Wow! Thank you so much, Emily Brewster.
Thanks very much.
With little to no